The battlefield burned like a dying sun. Smoke and dust swirled in the air, hiding broken soldiers and shattered machines. Explosions shook the ground as energy beams cut through the sky. The alien warrior, Kaylara, ran forward, her armor scorched and dented. Every step was painful, but she could not stop. Her people depended on her. She had trained for this moment all her life. Her muscles burned with exhaustion, but her mind stayed sharp. Around her, her unit struggled. Many had fallen, their screams lost in the chaos. The enemy forces were stronger, faster, and more numerous than anyone had predicted. Even so, Kaylara refused to surrender. A massive energy cannon fired from above, slicing the ground near her feet. She rolled, narrowly avoiding the blast. Sparks flew from the broken ground and she felt a sting on her shoulder. Blood ran warm against her armor. Pain would not stop her. She was a commander, and retreat was not an option. "Hold the line!" she shouted, her voice rising above the roar of the battlefield. Her soldiers looked to her for guidance, fear in their eyes, but also trust. She noticed one of her younger fighters, barely more than a trainee, stumble and fall. Without thinking, Kaylara sprinted to cover him, pushing him behind a fallen wall of metal. "Get up, keep moving," she urged. Her own wounds throbbed, but she did not show weakness. The enemy pressed forward, their weapons tearing through the defensive lines. Kaylara's mind raced. She needed a plan, a way to turn the tide, even if only for a moment. She remembered the civilians waiting in the shelters nearby. Their lives depended on her too. Her hands gripped her energy blade tighter. With a roar, she leapt forward, cutting through the enemy soldiers that tried to block her path. Her movements were fluid, precise, and deadly. Each strike saved her people from immediate danger, but every second took a toll on her body. A massive explosion shook the ground beneath her. Kaylara was thrown off her feet, hitting the hard soil with a sickening thud. She struggled to rise, her vision blurring. The smoke made it hard to breathe, but she forced herself upright. Her unit was in retreat. Many were dead. She realized that she might not survive this battle. She looked up. Above the clouds of smoke, a strange light shimmered in the distance. It was different from the energy beams of the enemy or the explosions around her. It was soft, steady, and almost warm. Kaylara blinked, trying to focus. Could this be some kind of weapon? Or a trap? No. Something inside her told her it was not a threat. She felt drawn to it, as if it was calling her. Her body ached, every muscle screaming in protest, but she forced herself to move toward the light. The battlefield blurred around her. She did not notice the enemy closing in, their figures barely visible through the smoke. A sudden wave of weakness swept over her. She collapsed onto the ground, coughing, trying to breathe through the pain. Her energy blade slipped from her hands and clattered onto the scorched soil. She knew her strength was fading. Her eyes scanned the horizon, looking for anyone who could help, anyone who could save her. But the battlefield offered nothing but death. Explosions shook her from side to side, and she felt her consciousness slipping. For a moment, she thought of her life, her family, her people, her unit. She had fought bravely, but perhaps this would be the end. Her chest felt heavy and her vision dimmed, and then she felt it, a gentle warmth wrapping around her. Not fire, not energy, not a weapon, but something calm and alive. She opened her eyes slowly. The light was closer now, almost within reach. Her hand stretched toward it, trembling. She wanted to call out, but her voice was weak. Still, the warmth comforted her. She felt as if she could breathe again, as if the pain was less sharp. Kaylara's thoughts became hazy. Memories of the battlefield, her family, her unit, all began to fade. Yet the warmth remained. It was strange, peaceful, and entirely unfamiliar. She wanted to stay in it, to let herself rest, but a small spark of her warrior spirit remained. She clenched her fists, fighting against the darkness that threatened to claim her. The last thing she saw before her vision completely went black was a figure. She could not make out the face, but the figure reached toward her. It radiated calm, strength, and a strange power she had never felt before. Kalara's mind whispered one word: alive. Then the battlefield disappeared. Explosions, smoke, screams, all of it vanished. She felt weightless, suspended in warmth, her wounds beginning to fade. The fear and pain that had been her constant companions on the battlefield started to dissolve. And just as she thought she had reached the end, something deep inside her told her this was not the end. Kalara slowly opened her eyes. At first, she thought she was still on the battlefield. Smoke and fire should have been everywhere, but instead, the air was cool and calm. She blinked, trying to focus. Soft light filled the room, and the smell was unlike the burning metal and smoke she had known for years. It was clean and gentle. She tried to move, and a sharp pain ran through her body, but it was different from before. Her wounds were gone. The gash on her shoulder, the bruises, even the fatigue from running and fighting, they were gone. Kalara sat up slowly, her mind racing. How could she be alive? The battlefield had taken so much. She should have died there. "Ah, you're awake," said a calm voice. Kalara turned her head. A human stood at the edge of the room, hands relaxed. He looked ordinary at first, brown hair, simple clothes, warm eyes, but there was something about him that made her pause. He was calm in a way she had never seen among soldiers. Where am I?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "You're safe," the human said gently. "I found you on the battlefield. You were badly injured. I brought you here." Kalara's eyes widened. Humans? Her species had always considered humans minor allies, capable but not strong enough to make a difference in battles like this. And yet one human had rescued her, against all odds. How did you save me?" she asked, her voice trembling. The human smiled faintly. "We have ways. Technology and medicine that might seem simple, but it works. You were near death, but you're alive now. That's what matters." Kalara looked down at her body, flexing her arms and legs. Everything felt normal, strong. Her wounds were completely gone. She touched her shoulder carefully. No pain, no scar. How is this possible? The human noticed her curiosity. "It's advanced healing tech," he said. "We've been studying ways to stabilize and repair the body quickly. Nothing magical, nothing strange, just science, and a lot of care." Kalara stared at him, still struggling to understand. She had fought countless battles. She had faced the deadliest weapons and the strongest enemies. She had never seen anything like this. Her own species had never developed such methods. If her people knew about this, it could change everything. For a long moment, she said nothing. Her mind was spinning with questions, doubts, and disbelief. The battlefield had felt like the end. But here she was, alive. Not by her own skill, not by chance, but because of a human. Finally, she spoke. Why would you help me? I am not even fully allied with your people. I am..." "Friend, enemy, ally, or stranger," the human interrupted gently. "It does not matter. You were in danger, you needed help. That is enough reason." Kalara blinked. No one had ever said that to her. She had grown up in a society where strength, victory, and survival mattered more than kindness or mercy. And yet, here was a human showing her both. She tried to stand, but her legs wobbled. The human stepped closer, steadying her with a hand on her elbow. She noticed the human's grip was firm but gentle, supportive, but not controlling. He led her to a chair near a small window, and Kalara sat, taking in her surroundings. The room was simple, practical, and tidy. Devices she had never seen lined the walls. Lights blinked softly, and the hum of machines was soothing, not threatening. Outside the window, she could see part of a space station, or maybe a ship, floating above the planet. It was beautiful, quiet, and safe. "You've been through a lot," the human said. "You need to rest, but soon we can talk. You have questions, I can tell." Kalara's eyes narrowed. "Questions? Yes, many. She paused, thinking carefully. Your people, your technology, it is unlike anything I have seen. Your healing, your weapons, your strategy. Humans survive in ways my species never considered. How? The human chuckled softly. We are not perfect, but we adapt. We think fast, we improvise, and we use what we have to survive. That has kept us alive in many situations, dangerous, hopeless, or impossible. Kalara studied him, her curiosity growing. Humans were not just allies. They were clever, unpredictable, and strong in ways her species often overlooked. She had underestimated them her whole life. Now she had seen their power firsthand, not in a battle, but in the act of saving her life. Her thoughts returned to the battlefield. The explosions, the smoke, the screams. She had faced death and expected the end. And yet here she was, breathing, alive and uninjured, and it was because of a human. I need to understand this, she said quietly. I need to learn. You will, the human replied. When you are ready, I can show you. Not just healing, but strategy, survival, tactics, the human way of doing things. You might be surprised. Kalara felt a strange mix of emotions, relief, confusion, and something new. Respect, curiosity, admiration. She had always believed her strength came from her own skill and training. Now she realized that humans could teach her something entirely different, something that might change her. Kalara slowly stood on her own. Her body felt strong, almost as if the wounds from the battlefield had never existed. She looked around the humans' quarters again. Machines hummed softly, lights blinked steadily, and the room felt alive in a quiet, comforting way. The human, whose name she now learned was Elias, watched her closely, his calm gaze steady but curious. You seem surprised by everything, Elias said with a faint smile. I'll admit it is a lot to take in. Humans do some things differently. Kalara folded her arms, still unsure how to respond. Different? Yes. Your methods, your technology, your way of healing, all of it is beyond anything I have ever seen. How do you humans survive so well against enemies far stronger than yourselves? Elias shrugged. We don't always survive. But when we do, it's because we observe, adapt, and never give up. You see, strength is not just about weapons or size. It's about using your mind, your body, and sometimes luck in ways others cannot predict. Kalara considered this. Her species relied on brute strength, strategy based on numbers and precise combat training. Humans seemed to survive using cleverness, quick thinking, and resilience. It was hard to understand, but she was curious. Show me, she demanded quietly. I want to understand. I want to learn. Elias nodded. Very well, but learning is not just about watching. You must experience it yourself. He led her to a simulation room, a wide area filled with holographic projections. Kalara's eyes widened. On the walls, floating maps of battlefields, enemy positions, and terrain shifted and changed constantly. Small drones hovered near the floor, projecting targets and obstacles. This is how we practice, Elias explained. We learn to think faster, anticipate threats, and adapt to situations that change in seconds. It is not about strength alone. It is about making decisions under pressure. Kalara clenched her fists. She had trained for years in her species' combat simulations, but this was different. The projections moved unpredictably. The drones reacted instantly to her actions. Every movement had a consequence. She took a deep breath and stepped forward. Her instincts guided her at first. Strike fast, strike hard. She moved with grace and precision, cutting through virtual enemies with her energy blade. But the projections adapted. New enemies appeared from directions she had not expected. The walls shifted. The floor tilted. She faltered. Elias observed, silently. Your instincts are strong, but you must learn to anticipate, not just react. Watch patterns, Use your mind as much as your body. Kelara paused. She studied the movements. Slowly, she began to notice subtle patterns, the way drones approached, how projections reacted to her strikes. She adjusted her movements, using timing and positioning instead of raw strength. Each strike became more precise. Each step calculated. Hours passed without her noticing. Sweat poured down her face, her body ached, but she felt exhilarated. Every success built confidence. Every failure taught her something new. She began to understand what Elias meant. Human strength was not just muscle and weapons. It was awareness, creativity, and patience. When the session ended, Kelara collapsed onto a bench, breathing heavily. Elias handed her a small cup of water. "You did well," he said. "Not perfect, but well. You are learning faster than most humans would." Kelara took the water, her mind racing. She had faced death on the battlefield. She had been wounded, nearly killed. And now, here she was, learning to fight and think in ways she had never imagined. She felt a strange mixture of pride and frustration. Pride at her progress, frustration at how much she had yet to understand. Later, Elias showed her other aspects of human life. How they repaired machines quickly, using simple but clever tools. How they organized teams in ways that allowed each member's strength to shine. How they observed the environment and adapted to it instantly. Kelara asked countless questions. She asked about strategy, about tactics, about survival. Elias answered, patiently, explaining not just the how, but the why. Slowly, Kelara realized that humans were not just clever. They were unpredictable, flexible, and determined in ways her species had never valued fully. By the end of the day, Kelara felt a strange respect for humans. She had always believed that power came from her strength, skill, and training. But humans survived with something else: ingenuity, courage, and an unbroken will. She began to understand that if she could combine her warrior instincts with these new methods, she could become stronger than ever before. That night, Kelara sat by the window, looking out at the stars. The battlefield was far away now, hidden, beneath the atmosphere of the planet below. Yet she could still feel it, the memory of smoke, fire, and screams. But the fear that had gripped her before was gone. She had learned something far more powerful. She was not helpless. She was alive, and she could grow stronger. Elias entered the room quietly. "You're thinking too much," he said gently, sitting beside her. "Rest. Absorb what you learned. Tomorrow we start again." Kelara nodded, her mind still racing. I never imagined humans could do this. Your ways, they are different, but powerful. I want to understand it all." Elias smiled. "And you will. But for now, rest. Even the strongest mind needs sleep." Kelara lay back, staring at the ceiling. Her body was tired, but her mind was alive in ways it had never been before. The spark that had begun when she woke was growing. Curiosity, respect, determination, and something else, something she did not yet name. Hope. For the first time since the battlefield, Kelara felt a quiet peace. She was alive, she was learning, and she was beginning to understand that humans, ordinary, underestimated humans, were far stronger than she had ever believed. And in that understanding, Kelara realized something profound. The galaxy might never see humans the same way again. Kelara woke early. The station was quiet, its corridors lit by soft lights that hummed gently. She stretched her arms and legs, surprised again by the strength in her body. Days ago, she had been broken on the battlefield. Now she felt renewed. But more than her body. It was her mind that felt alive. Elias was already waiting in the training hall. He stood calmly with a datapad in one hand, glancing at her as she entered. "Ready?" he asked simply. Kelara nodded. "I am ready." The training began. With movements she already knew, strikes, dodges, and defensive stances, Kelara moved with precision, her warrior instincts sharp. But Elias stopped her often. "Too predictable," he said once, tapping the datapad. "Your enemy will expect this. Again, but change it halfway. Kalara frowned but obeyed. She tried, again adjusting mid-movement. It felt strange at first, unpolished, messy, but Elias smiled. Good. Imperfection can confuse your opponent. Never let them read you like an open book. Hour after hour, the lessons continued. Elias taught her how to feint, how to retreat strategically, how to set traps with her own movements. He introduced drills where she had to fight while half-blinded, while tired, or while surrounded by multiple drones. Each time, Kalara felt her frustration rise. She had trained for years with strict discipline, and this chaos went against everything she knew. You humans fight like storms, she muttered after one session, sweat dripping from her brow. Unpredictable, wild. How can this be strength? Elias only smiled. Because storms are hard to control, and harder to stop. Kalara thought about that. She remembered the enemy soldiers on the battlefield, organized, disciplined, and predictable. If she had fought them with storm-like unpredictability, maybe, just maybe, she would have turned the tide that day. The training grew harder with each day. Elias pushed her not only physically but mentally. He gave her scenarios with no clear answers, forcing her to improvise. One moment she had to defend civilians in a simulation while outnumbered. Another time she had to fight with limited weapons. Sometimes she had to abandon her instincts completely and think like a human would, using misdirection, patience, and creativity instead of raw force. At first, she failed often. She grew angry, snapping at Elias. These tactics feel like weakness. Retreat, misdirection, trickery. This is not the way of a warrior. Elias looked at her calmly. Survival is not weakness. Victory is not always about honor. It is about protecting lives. If deception saves your people, would you call it dishonor? The word struck her deeply. She had been raised to believe in strength, in direct confrontation. But Elias's question lingered in her mind. If she could save lives by fighting differently, was it truly dishonorable? Or was it wiser? Day by day, she began to change. Her movements blended her alien discipline with human unpredictability. Her strikes were sharp but no longer obvious. Her defenses were strong but flexible. She learned when to press forward and when to fall back, when to fight and when to wait. Elias watched her progress with quiet pride. "You're learning faster than I expected," he admitted one evening as they sat in the mess hall. Kalara took a sip of water, her eyes thoughtful. "It is not easy. Everything you teach goes against what I was taught. But I see now, it works. Humans are not weaker than other species. You are different. That difference is strength." Elias chuckled. "Different is one way to put it, reckless is another. But yes, our way of fighting has kept us alive, even when the odds are against us." Kalara's respect for him grew, not just as a teacher, but as a warrior in his own right. She realized that Elias never boasted, never claimed superiority. He simply showed her to let her. The day came sooner than Kalara expected. A distress call arrived at the station. Her people were once again under heavy attack. The enemy forces were pushing deeper, burning cities and breaking defenses. Kalara listened in silence as the gag report echoed through the command deck. Her heart tightened. The battlefield she had left was calling her back. "I must return," she said firmly. Elias studied her face. "You're stronger now, but you know this will be dangerous. Are you ready to use what you've learned?" Kalara met his eyes with calm determination. "I did not survive only to hide. If I can fight again, I will fight differently. I will fight smarter." Elias nodded slowly. "Then it's time." A transport ship carried Kalara down to the war-torn planet. As she stepped out, the air filled with the familiar smell of smoke and ash. Her people looked at her in shock. Many believed she had fallen in the last great battle. Yet here she stood, alive, her armor repaired, her eyes sharper than before. "Commander Kalara?" one soldier gasped. "Yes," she answered. "I have returned." The soldiers gathered, whispers spreading quickly. Some looked at her with awe, others with doubt. How could one who had nearly died stand before them now? But Kaylara did not explain. She simply raised her blade. Today we fight again. But this time, we fight with a new storm. The battle erupted at dawn. Enemy forces pushed across the plains, their machines towering and their weapons blazing. Kaylara led a small strike force into the chaos. At first, her soldiers followed their old methods, direct charges, rigid formations. Kaylara stopped them. "No," she shouted. "Do not fight as before. Watch me. Follow my lead." She darted forward, not in a straight line, but in sudden, unpredictable movements. She struck one enemy, then vanished into the smoke, only to appear behind another. Her soldiers stared, confused but amazed as she used feints and traps to break the enemy lines. The enemy hesitated. They had faced Kaylara before, but this was different. She was no longer predictable. Her strikes came from unexpected angles. Her retreats led them into ambushes. Her movements flowed like water. "Now!" she cried, signaling her soldiers. They followed her into the gaps she created, overwhelming enemy squads that moments before had seemed unbeatable. The battle shifted. Her people began to believe again. Soldiers who had nearly broken in fear now surged forward with renewed courage. Kaylara's presence, her strange new tactics gave them hope. But the enemy adapted quickly, sending heavier units against her. Giant walkers thundered across the field, their cannons shaking the ground. Kaylara studied them carefully. In her old ways, she would have charged straight at them. But Elias's lessons echoed in her mind. She waved her soldiers back, then darted, alone toward the machines. Instead of attacking head-on, she lured the walkers into a narrow ravine. Their size became their weakness. She moved fast, striking at their joints, forcing them to collapse into each other. The massive machines fell, like broken statues blocking the enemy's advance. Her soldiers cheered, their voices rising above the roar of battle. Rumors began to spread even in the middle of the fight. Commander Kaylara had returned from death itself, and she fought like a storm no one could stop. Still, Kaylara knew victory was not complete. The enemy commander had not yet revealed his strongest forces. She gathered her unit in a ruined shelter. "Listen to me," she told them. "We cannot win by numbers. We win by thinking differently. Watch the enemy. Do not fight where they are strongest. Strike where they are blind. Trust me and we will survive this day." Her soldiers nodded, their fear replaced by determination. The battle raged into the night. Kaylara's new tactics turned hopeless moments into victories. Where once her people would have been crushed, now they pushed forward with surprising strength. She felt exhaustion creeping into her body, but she refused to stop. Each strike, each decision carried Elias's teachings within it. At one point, Kaylara faced the enemy commander himself. A towering warrior in heavy armor blocked her path. His weapon crackled with deadly energy. "You should have died," he growled. "Yet here you stand." "Why?" Kaylara raised her blade, her voice steady. "Because I learned from those you ignored, because I carry the strength of two worlds now." Their duel shook the battlefield. The enemy commander fought with brute force, each strike like thunder. But Kaylara moved with speed and unpredictability, dodging, feinting, striking when least expected. His strength was overwhelming, but his predictability was his weakness. In a sudden twist, Kaylara feigned a stumble. The commander struck, believing he had won. But she spun, using his weight against him, and drove her blade into a gap in his armor. The mighty warrior fell, stunned. Her soldiers erupted in cheers as the enemy began to retreat. The battle was won, not by numbers, not by brute strength, but by the storm Kaylara had become. When the field grew quiet, Kaylara stood among her soldiers, her chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. She looked to the stars above, thinking of Elias. His teachings had carried her through. Without him, she would not be standing here. One soldier approached her carefully. "Commander, you fight like no one else. What has changed?" Kaylara's eyes softened. She thought of the human who had saved her, trained her, and taught her to fight differently. I learned from an unlikely teacher, she said simply. And now, I fight not just for our people, but for something greater. The battlefield was silent except for the crackle of dying fires. Kalara raised her blade high. Her soldiers cheered, their voices echoing into the night. For the first time, Kalara did not feel like she was fighting alone. She carried with her the spirit of humans, the storm, and she knew the war itself would never be the same. The sun was setting outside the window, painting the sky in orange and gold. Liara sat on the bed, her body wrapped in a light blanket, her eyes watching the quiet glow of the human settlement beyond the hills. She had been on Earth for weeks now, and every day felt different from the life she once knew. There were no orders, no commanders shouting, no battles where she had to spill blood. For the first time in her life, she felt what silence truly meant. Ethan entered the room carrying a tray with food. His steps were calm, his face relaxed. He placed the tray gently beside her and gave her a small smile. "You need to eat," he said softly. "You've been thinking too much again." Liara gave him a sharp look, though there was no anger in it. "You humans," she murmured. "Always so persistent." Ethan chuckled. "That's one of our strengths. We don't give up easily." She took a piece of bread from the tray and chewed slowly. The taste was simple yet warm. It reminded her of something she had long forgotten. Home. Not the cold barracks of her empire, but the warm place of childhood where her parents had once told her stories of stars. For the first time, she admitted to herself that she missed that feeling. Later that night, Ethan sat with her outside the house. The stars stretched above them, countless points of light across the dark sky. Liara pointed upward, her silver eyes reflecting the night. "My people believe the stars are windows into the afterlife," she whispered. "When we fall, in battle our spirits travel through them, joining the eternal light." Ethan leaned back in his chair, staring at the same stars. Humans see them as possibilities. Each one could be another world, another chance, another story waiting to be told. For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence was not heavy, it was peaceful. Liara felt something she had never expected on a battlefield or in her empire. She felt safe, but safety never lasted long in a galaxy full of empires and wars. The next morning, Ethan received a signal on his old communicator. The message was short, but its meaning was heavy. The alien empire was searching for her. They had learned she was alive. Scouts had been sent near Earth's borders. Ethan's jaw tightened as he read. He turned to Liara, who already knew from the look on his face. "They are coming," she said quietly. He nodded. "But they won't take you. Not here. Not while I live." Her heart pounded at his words. She was trained never to show weakness, never to depend on others. Yet here was a human, a man who owed her nothing, promising to protect her at all costs. "Why?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "Why risk yourself for me? I am not one of you. My people once fought yours." Ethan stood firm, his eyes steady. "Because you're more than a soldier, Liara. You deserve a choice. Not chains, not war, just a chance to live." For the first time in her life, she felt tears form in her eyes. Not from pain, not from defeat, but from something new. Hope. Days later, alien ships appeared at the edge of Earth's space. They sent messages demanding her return. They called her a deserter, a traitor to their empire. Liara listened to their words, and for a moment the old soldier inside her wanted to obey. Years of training pressed on her mind. But then she looked at Ethan, standing by her side, unafraid, ready to face them. She made her decision. "No," she whispered to herself. Then louder, with strength in her voice. "I am not your weapon anymore." She stood in front of the communicator and sent her reply back to the alien ships. Her voice was clear, firm, and unshaken. "I am Liara of the Zyrath Empire, once a soldier, now free. I will not return to you. If you come to Earth, you will face resistance, not from me alone, but from humanity. Ethan smiled faintly at her words. She had chosen not just survival, but freedom. The alien ships withdrew after hours of silence. Whether it was fear of humanity's hidden strength or hesitation, no one knew.